The city never truly sleeps. Cars pass endlessly, neon lights flicker against wet asphalt, and millions of lives move side by side, yet somehow never touch. In the middle of this restless world walks Ethan, a man surrounded by people but crushed by loneliness. Every face he passes seems busy, distracted, fulfilled, while his own heart feels painfully empty. Ethan's days follow a quiet routine. Wake up, go to work, come home, scroll through messages that never come. His apartment is neat but lifeless, filled with echoes rather than laughter. At night, silence presses in so loudly it feels unbearable. He wonders how a world so crowded can leave someone feeling so unseen. He once believed God was close. He once prayed without effort. But disappointment, unanswered prayers, and quiet suffering have slowly built a wall between his faith and his pain. Now, when he looks up at the night sky through his window, he doesn't feel comfort, only questions. "Where are you?" he whispers, not even sure if he expects an answer. The camera lingers on his face as the city hums outside, reminding us that loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about feeling forgotten. At work, Ethan moves through the day like an actor following a well-rehearsed script. He smiles when spoken to, nods at the right moments, and answers questions with short, careful words. To everyone else, he looks fine, stable, responsible, unbothered. No one notices how heavy his chest feels or how tired his eyes have become. Loneliness has taught him how to hide well. During lunch break, he sits alone at a small table near the window. Around him, coworkers laugh, talk about weekend plans, families, weddings, and dreams they are chasing. Their voices blur into a distant noise as Ethan stares at his phone. He scrolls through old photos, moments frozen in time, smiles that were real, days when hope felt natural, days when prayer came easily and faith felt alive. A sharp ache settles in his chest. He wonders where everything went wrong. When did life become this quiet? When did God start to feel so far away? That night, the weight finally becomes too much. In his apartment, Ethan sits on the edge of his bed, shoulders slumped, staring at the floor. The silence presses in, thick and unforgiving. Slowly, his hands rise to his face. The strength he's been holding on to all day slips away. Tears fall. Not loudly, not dramatically, but honestly. He doesn't try to stop them. In the middle of his breakdown, a memory surfaces. His mother's voice, soft, steady, repeating words she once read to him when he was young. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." The verse doesn't fix anything. It doesn't erase the pain, but it lingers. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan doesn't feel judged for being broken. He feels seen. Maybe this pain isn't proof that God has left. Maybe it's proof that he still needs him. The armor cracks, but something gentler begins to breathe beneath it. Sleep refuses to come. Ethan lies in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside his window. Every sound feels louder in the darkness. Passing cars, a distant siren, the slow rhythm of his own breathing. His mind won't rest. Thoughts circle endlessly, heavy and unresolved. So finally he gets up. He steps out into the night, pulling his jacket close as cool air brushes his skin. The streets are nearly empty now, washed in pale streetlight. Each step feels aimless, yet necessary, as though his body knows where to go before his mind does. He walks without destination, guided only by the need to escape the silence closing in on him. That's when he sees it. A small, aging church stands quietly between taller buildings, its stone walls worn by time. Most of the lights are off, but one window glows softly, warm against the darkness. Ethan slows. He hasn't stepped inside a church in years. Too many disappointments, too many unanswered prayers. He tells himself to keep walking, but something deeper urges him to stop. The door creaks as he enters. Inside, the air is still. Wooden pews line the room, and faint candlelight flickers near the altar. He sits in the back, unsure of what he's searching for. He doesn't pray. He doesn't speak. He simply sits, breathing in the quiet. Minutes pass, maybe longer, and then something shifts. The loneliness doesn't disappear, but it loosens its grip. His chest feels lighter. The noise in his mind softens into stillness. Not because answers arrive, but because presence does. A gentle, unspoken comfort settles over him, as if he is being held without being touched. A realization stirs in his heart. God was never absent. Not in the silence. Not in the waiting. Not in the pain. Grace had been echoing all along, patiently filling the spaces Ethan thought were empty. For the first time in a long while, he doesn't feel completely alone. He sits there quietly found. Morning arrives softly. Pale sunlight slips through the curtains as Ethan wakes, not fully rested, but different. The heaviness that usually greets him is quieter now, as if something unseen stood guard through the night. He sits on the edge of his bed, remembering the stillness of the church, the warmth he couldn't explain. For once, the memory doesn't fade with daylight. Outside, the world resumes its rhythm. People rush past. Cars honk. Life moves forward without pause. Ethan walks among it all, still carrying his loneliness, but no longer crushed by it. There's a fragile awareness growing inside him, a sense that he is not as invisible as he once believed. At a small cafe near his office, he stops for coffee. As he waits, an elderly man ahead of him struggles to pick up dropped coins. Without thinking, Ethan kneels to help. Their eyes meet. The man smiles, not hurried, not polite, but genuinely grateful. "God bless you," he says quietly. The words linger longer than expected. Later that day, Ethan notices small things he once ignored. A coworker asking if he's okay and actually waiting for an answer. A stranger holding the door open, sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. None of it is dramatic. None of it announces itself as divine. Yet together they feel intentional, like reminders scattered gently along his path. For years, Ethan believed grace would arrive loudly, like a miracle that erased pain in a single moment. But now he begins to understand something deeper. Grace often comes quietly, through people, through kindness, through moments so ordinary they're easy to miss. That evening, he pauses before entering his apartment and looks up at the sky. The loneliness hasn't vanished, but it no longer defines him. Somewhere within, hope is taking root, not as certainty but as trust. Grace, he realizes, has been meeting him where he is, not where he thought he should be. Hope doesn't change everything at once. Ethan learns this the hard way. A few days after his quiet awakening, life pushes back. At work, a long-expected opportunity slips through his fingers. A position he had worked toward, one he believed might finally give his life direction, is given to someone else. The news lands without warning. No explanation, no apology. Just a polite smile and a closed door. Ethan walks home slower than usual. The familiar weight creeps back in, whispering old lies. See? Nothing ever changes. You hoped for too much. The city that once felt alive now feels indifferent again. Every step echoes with disappointment. Inside his apartment, the silence returns. It's sharper this time, heavier because it comes after hope. He sinks into his chair and stares at the wall, anger rising beneath the sadness. I tried, he mutters. I opened my heart. I believed. And this is what happens. He wants answers. He wants reassurance. He wants God to explain himself. But none comes. Instead, there is only quiet. Ethan clenches his fists, fighting the urge to shut down completely. Then he remembers the church, the stillness, the way comfort came without words. Slowly he exhales and loosens his grip. For the first time, he stays present in the pain instead of running from it. Faith, he realizes, isn't proven in moments of peace, but in moments like this, when hope feels fragile, when prayers feel unanswered, when trust is a choice, not a feeling. He doesn't feel strong. He doesn't feel certain, but he whispers a simple, trembling prayer. Stay with me, even here. And somehow that is enough. The pain remains, but it no longer owns him. Grace doesn't remove the struggle, teaches him how to stand inside it. Healing doesn't arrive all at once. It begins quietly, through moments that feel almost accidental. One evening, Ethan finds himself back at the small church, not out of obligation, but familiarity. The doors are open, and inside, a handful of people sit in a loose circle. There's no stage, no performance. Just ordinary faces, marked by time and experience. Someone invites him to sit. He hesitates, then joins them. The room fills with stories. A woman speaks of grief she never expected to carry so long. A man admits to fear he's hidden behind jokes and work. Another talks about prayers that went unanswered, and how doubt became part of their faith rather than the end of it. No one interrupts. No one rushes to fix anything. When it's Ethan's turn, his voice falters. Words come slowly, uneven, but honest. He talks about loneliness, about feeling invisible, about believing for a long time that something was wrong with him. He expects discomfort or silence. Instead, he sees understanding, nods, soft eyes, a shared heaviness that somehow feels lighter when carried together. For the first time, Ethan realizes he isn't alone in his brokenness. The pain he thought isolated him is the very thing connecting him to others. In this room, vulnerability isn't weakness, it's language. And grace moves freely through it. As the meeting ends, someone places a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for sharing," they say. Simple words, but they land deeply. Walking home, Ethan feels something shift again. Not the removal of pain, but the reshaping of it. Loneliness no longer feels like a prison. Feels like a doorway, one that leads toward compassion, community, and quiet strength. God's comfort, he begins to understand, often wears human faces. And tonight, he carries their light with him. Change doesn't announce itself. It unfolds in small, almost unnoticeable ways. Weeks pass, and Ethan begins to move differently through the world. He listens more. He notices more. Pain has slowed him down in a way that makes space for others. At the church, he starts arriving early, staying late. Not because he's asked to, but because he wants to. He helps arrange chairs, pours coffee, offers a smile to strangers who look as unsure as he once felt. One evening, a young man sits beside him, shoulders tense, eyes distant. They exchange a few polite words, nothing deep. But Ethan recognizes the look. He's worn it before. Without planning to, he says softly, "You don't have to pretend here." The words surprise them both. The young man exhales, as if something heavy has been released. He begins to talk about loneliness, disappointment, and feeling like God has gone silent. Ethan doesn't interrupt. He doesn't offer advice. He just listens. And in that listening, something sacred happens. Ethan realizes he doesn't need to have everything figured out to be useful. His wounds, once a source of shame, are now bridges. The comfort he received in the darkest moments is flowing outward, touching someone else's life. Later that night, as Ethan walks home, he reflects on how subtly everything has changed. His problems haven't disappeared. His questions remain. But purpose has begun to grow where despair once lived. Grace, he understands now, doesn't simply heal, it sends. And maybe this is what faith looks like in a lonely world. Not perfect answers, but present hearts. Not loud miracles, but quiet faithfulness. Not escape from pain, but meaning formed within it. For the first time, Ethan doesn't just feel comforted. He feels called. Doubt doesn't disappear just because purpose begins. It waits, quietly, patiently. One night, after a long day of giving and listening, Ethan walks home under a sky heavy with clouds. Fatigue settles into his bones. The city feels distant again, unfamiliar. Old thoughts resurface, uninvited. What if this peace doesn't last? What if I fall back into the silence I came from? At home, he sits alone in the dim light of his living room. The echoes return, not as loudly as before, but persistent enough to be felt. He wonders if he's been mistaking momentum for meaning, activity for healing. The fear is subtle but sharp. What if this faith is only temporary? Ethan opens the window. Cool air moves through the room, carrying distant sounds of life continuing without him. He remembers who he was weeks ago. Isolated, invisible, convinced that grace had passed him by. That memory doesn't accuse him. It humbles him. He reaches for a worn Bible on his shelf, not searching for a promise, not demanding reassurance. He opens it randomly and reads slowly, letting the words settle instead of rushing them. The message is simple: God is near, not in perfection, not in certainty, but in persistence. Ethan closes his eyes. Faith, he realizes, isn't the absence of doubt. It's the decision to remain open despite it, to stay, to trust again, even when the night feels familiar. He doesn't feel suddenly brave. He feels honest, and that honesty steadies him. The doubts don't vanish, but they lose their power to isolate him. They become companions on the journey rather than walls at the end of it. As he turns off the light and prepares for sleep, Ethan understands something deeply personal and quietly freeing. Faith isn't something you outgrow doubt with. It's something you grow through it. Ethan doesn't notice the change at first. It happens gradually, like dawn breaking without announcement. One afternoon, while helping at the church's outreach program, he finds himself surrounded by people he would have once avoided. Faces lined with hardship, eyes carrying stories too heavy for words. He listens. He serves. He stays present. There's no dramatic moment where everything makes sense. Instead, there is a steady rhythm of small kindnesses, shared meals, quiet conversations, laughter breaking through sorrow. A woman thanks him for listening when no one else would. A teenager admits that Ethan's words helped him feel less alone. Each encounter feels like a gentle echo, reflecting something Ethan once desperately needed himself. Later that evening, he walks through the city streets again, but they no longer feel indifferent. He notices how many people carry loneliness silently, just as he did. And instead of shrinking from it, he feels drawn toward them. Not to fix them, not to save them, just to be present. For the first time, Ethan understands that loneliness isn't a sign of failure. It's a shared human language, and grace speaks fluently through it. He pauses at a crosswalk as the light changes. The city hums around him, full of movement, noise, and life. He feels small but not insignificant, connected but not consumed. God's comfort, he realizes, was never meant to end with him. It was meant to move outward, quietly weaving people together through compassion and understanding. As Ethan continues walking, there's no grand revelation, only a deep, steady peace. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that stays. Loneliness hasn't vanished from the world, but it no longer has the final word. Morning light pours gently through the city, soft and unhurried. Ethan stands by his window watching the world wake up. The streets below are familiar. The same roads, the same buildings, the same rhythm of life. But something within him has changed. The loneliness that once defined him now feels like a distant memory, not erased, but transformed. He steps outside and walks without hurry. Faces pass him, some smiling, some burdened, some lost in thought. He knows now what he couldn't see before. Everyone carries something unseen. Everyone is fighting a quiet battle. And everyone, whether they know it or not, longs for comfort. Ethan pauses at a small park where birds gather and children laugh in the distance. He closes his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. He doesn't ask for signs. He doesn't beg for certainty. He simply gives thanks for the nights he survived, for the silence that taught him how to listen, for the grace that met him when he felt most forgotten. God's comfort didn't arrive the way Ethan expected. It didn't remove loneliness from the world. It didn't shield him from pain or doubt. Instead, it stayed. It walked with him. It echoed through people, through quiet moments, through shared wounds and unexpected kindness. And now those echoes live within him. Ethan opens his eyes and continues walking, carrying something steady and unshakable. Not perfection, not answers, but hope. A hope rooted in presence. A faith shaped by compassion. A life willing to sit beside others in their loneliness and remind them, without words, that they are not alone. As the camera pulls back, the city moves on around him. Ordinary, beautiful, broken, held. Grace does not shout. It echoes, and those echoes remain.